Hello students, as we have studied about elastic collision as well as inelastic collisions also, but in practical cases or in real collision, there is not a perfectly elastic case and neither a perfectly plastic case. Means it is not like that collision is perfectly elastic or perfectly inelastic. So we call them as partially elastic collision, in which kinetic energy reduces, and that's why the speed of separation is less than the speed of approach. So in practical or real collisions, now such type of collisions are actually partially elastic, and in such collision the kinetic energy reduces and that speed of separation is less than the speed of approach. So this is the case that we have to face in our practical life or in case of real collisions. So coefficient of restitution is a factor which gives us a measure of the degree of restitution of a collision. So we can define coefficient of restitution as a factor which gives us the measure of degree of restitution of a collision. Means how elastic a collision is, that we can define by the factor coefficient of restitution. This is a degree of restitution of a collision. This is given by a factor called coefficient of restitution, and it is defined as the ratio of, it is actually given by the value small e, and it is defined as the ratio of magnitude of relative velocity of separation after collision to the, we have to take its ratio with magnitude of relative velocity of approach before collision. This is how we can define the factor called coefficient of restitution. It is denoted by small e and is given as small e is equal to v1 minus v2, mod of v1 minus v2, because we have to take magnitude, upon mod of u1 minus u2. This is the mathematical expression for coefficient of restitution, and if we remove these mods we have to write it as minus v1 minus v2 upon u1 minus u2, right? And the value of E depends on the material of the colliding bodies. E depends on material of colliding bodies. We can judge the collision by the value of coefficient of restitution for that case. For example, if we have E is equal to 1, that means the magnitude of relative velocity of separation after collision is equal to magnitude of relative velocity of approach before collision. If this ratio is 1, so E is equal to 1 implies a perfectly elastic collision, right? Now if we have E lie between 0 and 1, if the value of E lie between 0 and 1, so in that case the collision we have is inelastic collision, because the relative velocity of separation is less than the relative velocity of approach. So the collision we have is inelastic collision. After this, if we have E is equal to 0, if E exactly is equal to the 0, then the collision is perfectly inelastic, because in such case, this is perfectly inelastic, because in such case the two bodies move together with a common velocity and the relative velocity of separation is 0. Now if we have E is greater than 1, if E is greater than 1, that means the kinetic energy increases. So such type of collision is called super elastic, or we also call them as explosive collision, right? So these are super elastic collision. These are the values of E which help us to judge whether the collision is elastic, inelastic, or super elastic. So that was all about the coefficient of restitution. It is basically the ratio of the relative velocity of separation to that of relative velocity of approach, and by the value of E we can judge actually the collision, the type of collision occurring there, that we can judge by the values of coefficient of restitution. Okay, so that's all for the video. For further videos, stay tuned and keep studying. Thank you.